Hello dear learner, today's topic is the Glaser's teaching model. Highlight of our this session are family of basic teaching model, overview of the basic teaching model, components of Glaser's teaching model, fundamental elements of Glaser's teaching model, and application of the basic teaching model. First of all, teaching model is a blueprint designed in advance for providing necessary structure and direction to the teacher for realizing the stipulated objectives. Different educational psychologists have designed several types of teaching models which provide suitable guidelines to the teachers for modifying the behavior of the learners. Five-fold classification of the teaching models is classified models of teaching in different heads. These heads are historical teaching models, philosophical teaching models, psychological teaching models for teacher education, and modern teaching models. Among these heads, the psychological teaching model is an important one. John P. Deco has discussed the four basic psychological model of teaching. He considered that Glaser's teaching model is the basic model of teaching. Now we will know who is Robert Glaser. Robert Glaser was born on January 18, 1921. He was an American educational psychologist. He was a renowned scholar in the fields of psychology, cognitive science, and learning and instruction. Glaser was a co-founder of the Learning Research and Development Center, which is also known as LRDC, at the University of Petersburg in 1963. He served as a director of this center until 1997. Unfortunately, the scholar passed away on February 4th, 2012. Now, in this section, we will discuss the overview of the Glaser's teaching model. The basic teaching model was developed by Robert Glaser in 1962. He has used psychological laws and principles in this model. It is called the basic teaching model because it tries to describe the whole teaching process by dividing it into the four basic components or parts. This model has the following elements. First one is instructional objectives. Next one is entering behavior. Third one is instructional procedure. And the last performance assessment. All these four basic components of the teaching process interact and influence each other. Now, here is a brief description about instructional objectives. From the group of educational objectives, instructional objectives are the specific objectives corresponding to or derived from precise professional tasks whose results are observable and measurable against given criteria. These objectives mean those activities that a teacher is to do before teaching. Instructional objectives contain all components of a well-stated objective. A well-stated objective should include four components. What are those four components? These are the performance, a product, the condition, and the criterion. What is the performance? A well-stated objective must be written in terms of what students are expected to do, not what teacher is to do. Student learning is the purpose of the instruction. Well-stated objectives should always be written in terms of observable student performance. The performance component in a well-stated objective specifies exactly what student action should be observed as a result of instruction. What is the product? The product is what students will produce by their action. It is that product which will be evaluated to determine whether the objective has been mastered. The product is the planned outcome resulting from the instructional process. It is what you want student to produce or be able to do. Then what is the conditions? The component of a well-stated objective includes the information, tool or equipment and materials what will or will not be available to the student. Any special limitation or restriction as to time and space, and any other requirement that may be applicable. Next, we will discuss about the element criteria. The fourth and last component of a well-stated objective is the level of acceptable student performance. Here we state the level of behavior we will accept as satisfactory or the minimum level for showing mastery. The instructional objective is those objectives that the student should attain upon completion of a unit of instruction. So, a well-specific educational objective should be relevant, logical, unequivocal, achievable, and also feasible. From these elements of the model, we come to know about how the instructional objectives are written in behavioral statements. This process is also known as task description. By this element, we can differentiate the objectives of teacher and the learners. Usually, standard is selected on the basis of past experiences and class expectations. The second element of the basic teaching model is entering behavior. Entry behavior, also known as prior knowledge. It is the knowledge, skill, and attitudes a student has before they start a new academic program. These behaviors mean those abilities or behaviors of the pupils which are necessary for the understanding of the contents. Entering behavior describes the student level before the instruction begins. It refers to what the student has previously learned, his or her intellectual ability and development, his or her motivational state, and certain social and cultural determinants of his or her learning ability. To acquire the level according to the teacher's expectations in the future, the present level of people's knowledge and skills is the entering behavior. It is essential to detect the entering behavior of the learner before giving instruction. It is just like previous knowledge of a subject or the performance of the learner in terms of educational abilities. This step is important because only after this step the teacher can take the student from entry behavior to the terminal behavior. This precision may come at the piece of seeing the student as less complex, less able, and less experienced than he may in fact be. Entry behavior includes the prerequisite knowledge, attitudes, or skills which the students already possess that are relevant to the learning task or subject matter, and that a teacher may require from student to demonstrate before beginning of a topic. This includes previous education and experience that the student bring to the new learning context. Ultimate goal of the subject matter or topic being to advance the students from where he or she is, that is entry behavior, to where a teacher would like him or her to be, that means having mastered the learning objectives or terminal behavior. Next element is instructional procedure. The instructional process is of vital importance because it is through the process of instruction that many objectives are achieved. This element means those teaching activities that are used for the presentation of the contents. Instructional processes are known as the practical aspect of teaching. In these aspects, various methods, techniques, strategies, etc. are used by the teacher. The question of what to teach always precedes how to teach it. That is why the instructional process may lack relevance when it is removed from specific understandings, attitudes, and skill that are to be learned. A good instructional process is one that enables the teacher and pupils to achieve predetermined instructional objectives by selecting appropriate teaching learning strategies. To develop the competence of choosing the relevant instructional process, the teacher is required to develop the skill of planning of the instruction. Developing instructional objectives, it may be cognitive or affective, etc., in precise terms, is one of the most important aspects of instructional planning. It helps in selecting suitable teaching learning alternatives and evaluation procedures. The processes in the classroom are designed by the teacher to achieve the objectives of teaching. The teacher deals with instructional processes in dealing with content. When you, as a teacher, try to develop the instructional process, you may think what the change in learners' behavior will be through the pre-designed learning environment consisting of content, media, activity, resources, learning style, etc. Hence, the instructional procedure may be considered as providing a learning environment consisting of relevant components with which an individual interacts and gains experiences leading to the attainment of certain pre-specified and pre-planned learning outcomes. This means that there is a change in the behavior of the learners, namely a change in the cognitive structure or skill or values, attitudes, ideas, etc. Thus, a change in behavior could be overt, that means behavioristic view, or in internal cognitive structure by the cognitivistic view. One thing that emerged from the above discussion related to the instructional process is that the teacher has to organize a control environment for the achievement of predetermined learning outcomes. The instructional procedure provides a systematized teaching learning procedure in any institutional setting. To create a genuine instructional environment, one has to develop an understanding. Various components of the instructional processes are planning, execution or implementation, managing and monitoring, and the fourth one is feedback mechanisms. In short, these elements or includes those activities that are used to present the contents. Next element of the basic teaching model is performance assessment. Performance assessment are a useful tool for evaluating students' understanding of a subject and if they are able to apply their knowledge in specific situations. This step means those tests and observation based on which a teacher makes decisions. Teachers get information regarding the limits up to which a learner has acquired efficiency in the contents. It is known to us as terminal performance. Educators use performance assessments often to identify the best methods for teaching students and assisting them throughout their learning processes in a course. Performance assessments can help educators identify students' progress and what adjustment to make to the class for the curriculum to ensure students are successful in their education. These assessments are also very helpful which evaluating the effectiveness of course lesson plans. A teacher may decide to use a diagnostic performance assessment prior to starting a new lesson to gain perspective on student current level of knowledge of a topic and give the assessment once more at the end of the lesson to understand if the activities throughout the course were helpful to the students. Educators may administer a performance assessment at any point, so they often use them at the beginning and end of the course. A performance assessment often asks students to use problem solving skill or critical thinking to produce a report, experiment, or give a performance that displays their ability to apply what they have learned. Any teacher or student designed learning activity or investigation in which students demonstrate their knowledge, understanding, and or skills through a performance task. These assessments engage students in meaningful learning in authentic context. So genuine applications knowledge and yield a tangible product and or performance that serve as evidence of learning. A performance task is what students actually do within a large performance assessment framework. Task build around student interest, engage students and help them make connection to their personal lives. In this step, performance may be measured by any method, but the method should be valid, reliable, objective, and efficient. Here, the ultimate behavior of the learner is tested so that feedback may be given. If the performance assessment indicates that the learners have not been able to achieve the objectives, necessary change are brought about in any one or all preceding elements of this model, so that the goals of instruction are attained. All four basic components are interrelated, interact, and influence each other. One sets the base for the other by serving as a base or feedback for the successful operation of the teaching performance. Now, in this part, we will discuss the fundamental elements of Glaser's basic teaching model. Glaser's model may be described in terms of the fundamental element as follows. First point is focus. This model attempts to verify every aspect and major activity of the entire teaching and learning process. It also emphasizes on the sequential presentation of the instructional process. Here, concentration is given to the psychologically more effective and systematic teaching learning process. The next fundamental element is syntax. In this model, the sequential flow of activities is as listed below. First, the objectives to be followed and fixed following Bloom's taxonomy. Now it may be revised Bloom taxonomy. Then the entering behavior showing the understanding and background of the student is determined. Third stage is thereafter the instruction work is carried out to achieve the objectives keeping in view entering behavior of the learner. And the ultimate behavior of the learner is determined by using a different types of test, that is performance assessment. Next element of this teaching model is social system. The model describes a teacher-dominated classroom climate. Here, students are receptive and appreciative of the teaching activities. The success of this model depends upon the competency and ability of the teacher in terms of various skills like the formulation of objectives, use the proper strategies, techniques of evaluation, etc. Next element of this basic teaching model is principle of reaction. The main principles of reaction are as follows. The first one is principle of interdependence. The students' responses are to be understood and dealt with in the light of the interaction and interdependence process and assessments. Next point is the principle of active involvement. Proper execution of this model requires a lot of activity on the part of the teacher. The model requires the active involvement of the teacher from the beginning to the end. Understanding the potential and deficiencies of the students is required at every stage of the teacher in order to achieve the objectives. Next point is principles of follow-up. An assessment is made after teaching. In case the results are not in accordance with set objectives, gaps and deficiencies are found by the teacher. Then he or she tries to rectify the drawbacks by taking corrective measures. The next element of this teaching model is support system. The teacher needs the following support system for successful application of this teaching model. First is proper environment. A proper teaching learning environment and situations are required for the use of suitable teaching strategies. Next point is pre-service and in-service facilities. Availability of adequate pre-service and in-service activities for the teachers to acquire needed skills for using this model. Next point is availability of appropriate evaluation device for the assessment of entering and terminal behavior of the students. The next element of this basic teaching model is application. Since the model is quite systematic and structured, it implies a personal contact between the teacher and the students. It implies a greater emphasis on the competency of the teacher rather than on his or her personality. This model applies to all levels of educational processes. That means it may be elementary, may be secondary, and may be higher education. It is also applied to subject matter related to any subject, as a teacher can use this model for teaching them. Teaching for any length of time, it may be 40 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour, maybe take some several weeks, is possible using this model. Glaser's models of teaching indicates that teaching includes a wide range of decisions and practices, much of which requires little or no personal contact between the teacher and students. It implies a greater emphasis on the competence of the teacher than on his or her personality. Several types of teaching models are there. These models of teaching provide suitable guidelines to the teacher for modifying the behavior of the learners according to the stipulated objectives of study. There are five-fold classification of teaching models. In this classification, psychological teaching model is one of the categories. Psychological model of teaching can be classified under different subheads. The basic teaching model is one of the subhead of the psychological teaching models. The basic teaching model was developed by Robert Glaser in 1962. This teaching model has four basic components. These components are instructional objectives, entering behavior, instructional procedure, and performance assessment. All these four components interact and influence each other. This teaching model can be described in terms of the fundamental element of a teaching model, from focus to applications of the models. Focus of this teaching model are the whole teaching learning process, sequential presentation of the instructional process, and more effective and systematic teaching process. Syntax of this teaching model secure sequential flow of activities. Teacher-dominated classroom climate form the social system of this model. In this model, principles of interdependence, active involvement, and follow-up are the common reactions. The support system of this teaching model are the proper environment, in-service and pre-service facilities, and availability of appropriate evaluation devices. This teaching model is applicable for all levels of education, for all subject and teaching for any length of time. Here are some exercise